talked about, okay? And then the other thing is called insulin resistant. And we want to look at that in a little bit more detail. But I first want to give you some facts in regards to what is really happening within the United States, okay? So here's a snapshot of diabetes in the United States. Now, many people talk about pre-diabetes, okay? And so pre-diabetes is really reaching epidemic numbers, with actually 1 out of 3 Americans adult having it. And those 9 out of 10 of those adults do not even realize that they have it, because it's kind of like a hidden epidemic that's going on. But insulin resistance can also be called pre-diabetes, so if you've ever heard that term. Now, what we do know is that 40% of men over 45 suffer from complications of low testosterone. And even in my practice, I had a young man. He was only 23 years old, and he was actually diagnosed with low testosterone levels. So it is a real epidemic that's taking hold within the United States. 17,487,000 people in the U.S. actually have coronary heart disease. And remember the very first slide, that study that I put out, that was put out by the World Diabetic Association or the World Diabetic Journal, is where it was actually in, where they were saying oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and all of that combination of it can actually lead to coronary heart disease, okay? And according to like the CDC, this was put out by the CDC. Another thing is 10% of all women today, okay, are experiencing menstrual irregularities, infertility, and all of those are linked to some metabolic issues at the core of it. This was amazing for me to realize, is that in 1980, if you can even believe that, to me that's not very long ago, but in 1980, there were 0 cases of adolescent type 2 diabetes in the United States. Now, not type 1. There's a significant difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. But this study really shows like how prevalent it is from 1980 until now. Today, there are hundreds of thousands of adolescents that are actually diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So we have to really look at what is insulin resistance, because insulin resistance is a precursor to diabetes. So that means it can be happening 8 to 10 years before anybody even realizes it. So insulin resistance, we have to look at a little bit of anatomy here. Right here we have our stomach, okay? And then right behind the stomach is a little organ, it's a little glandular organ called the pancreas. It's about 6 inches long. And then what that pancreas actually does is it secretes a hormone called insulin. And then that helps our body to use glucose. Okay, so this is really the overall pattern of it. We have our stomach, right behind the stomach is the pancreas. The pancreas releases glucose, or releases insulin to help the cells of our body to uptake glucose so that we can use it for energy. Here's our insulin, and it's delivering energy to the cells. When all of this is in balance, our cells get the energy that it needs, okay, because the glucose and the insulin is opening up the pathway and the glucose is going into the cell and it's leaving the bloodstream. Then that's why our blood sugar levels can remain stable, okay? If we have more glucose than our cells can use, insulin helps the body to store that extra glucose as fat. That's an important thing that we have to think about in regards to metabolism. So to keep blood sugars in balance, however, the hormones, so life is always also about communication. So the question is how does the pancreas know to be releasing insulin into the bloodstream to keep those blood sugar levels in balance? And there are some hormones that must be released from the duodenum, and our duodenum is right there, okay, right in that little curvature of the stomach. Some people say it's the last part of the stomach. Some people say it's the first part of the small intestine, but it doesn't really matter. There's a multitude of hormones that are delivered from the small intestine. One of the main ones that many of us hear a lot about is a hormone called GLP-1. Now it's very the buzzword kind of out in the community, and the synthetic form of it are the injectables, and so we've all heard of the injectables that are out there. But this hormone, GLP-1, is actually produced by our own bodies, and it is produced in the duodenum, in that small intestine. Mainly, it's produced other places in the body, but mainly that's really where it's produced. Okay. And so its job is the hormone must be released from the duodenum and send a message to the pancreas. And when it sends this message to the pancreas, it tells the pancreas to release or increase the amount of insulin in proportion to the amount of carbohydrates that we've eaten. So if we eat, for example, 25 grams of carbs, then this hormone is supposed to be released to tell the pancreas to release 25 grams of insulin to neutralize it into the bloodstream. The other thing is that this little hormone released from the duodenum is also to be sending a message up to the liver. It sends a message to the liver to tell the liver to decrease the amount of glucose going into the blood in proportion to the amount of calories or energy that we've eaten. Okay? And so if we're eating a bunch of food, our liver is constantly always putting glucose into the bloodstream in order for us to maintain our energies. That's why people can fast. That's why people can go 3 weeks without eating, all those kinds of things, because the liver is continually putting glucose into the bloodstream unless it's told not to do that. And this humble little hormone called GLP-1 is responsible for telling both the pancreas, put some insulin in, and to tell the liver, stop putting glucose into the blood because I have enough energy from the foods that I've just eaten. The problem comes is when this hormone, GLP-1, isn't working. And those messages aren't getting into it. And that's why the buzzword in all of this is talking about this GLP-1 hormone within the body. So when that information is not being released or being given, then this is more what happens in our bloodstream, is that we have some insulin, but we have glucose coming in through our food. Our pancreas wasn't told to neutralize the glucose there. And then the liver was never given the message to stop the amount of glucose going into the bloodstream. And so as you see what happens, we have more glucose in our blood than we have insulin. So then what does the body say? The body says, yo, Mr. Pancreas, now start putting insulin into the bloodstream and put more insulin into the bloodstream and put more insulin into the bloodstream. And then all of a sudden there's an overwhelming amount of insulin that is put into the bloodstream. And like I said before, insulin is not bad. It's when insulin becomes oxidized. And what happens is sometimes then these cells put a hardened layer around their cell because it's been bombarded and bombarded and bombarded by insulin. And a cell doesn't like that. So it puts a protection mode up in it. And then that is actually right there that we have this protection mode into it. And then that is when people have insulin resistance because the cell is saying, I've had enough. Okay. So what we're trying to really look at is this balance. We want to have the balance between the insulin and the glucose in balance. Okay. When those things are balanced, this is what it looks like. When it's not balanced, we just have way too much insulin. Our insulin is out of control. The body puts a protective mode on it. And then it just doesn't work right. And that is what insulin resistance is. So it still is all about just too much glucose getting into the bloodstream, and the body overreacts with insulin. Okay? So there are many diagnoses that are out there for when people have insulin resistance. And so these are all through studies. And as you can see, type 2 diabetes, stroke, heart disease, high blood pressure, sarcopenia, erectile dysfunction, Alzheimer's, arthritis, fatty liver, PCOS for anybody who's looking at fertility kinds of things in PCOS, childhood obesity, osteoarthritis, dementia, migraines, just regular obesity, Like I said, there's just a plethora of diagnoses that at the core of it is both oxidative stress, because remember, oxidative stress is the driver of insulin resistance, because there's just the blood is too dirty. Many times it's too dirty even because of the amount of glucose that's getting into the blood. And the cells of the body put out a protective layer to protect themselves, okay? So really it's oxidative stress and then poor gut communication. A real driver of it is the gut communication. We've got to keep that duodenum open and clean and functioning. So how can really improve this gut communication? LifeVantage has a phenomenal answer for that as well. And they've talked about or called this called mind-body, the mind-body GLP-1 system. And as you can see, what it's proven to do is to naturally increase that GLP-1 hormone by an average of 140%. Well, that might seem like a lot, except that we have so many chemicals in our air, which of course those are oxidative stress things, but we have so many chemicals in our food. We have nut and seed oils, the sugar alcohols, and the amount of hidden sugars that are in our food is just astronomical. So many times that's why we are in the metabolic demise that we are, is that we really, really do need to increase the release of this GLP-1 hormone, making sure that the GLP-1 hormone is communicating to our pancreas and communicating to our liver. And that's why when it's not working, people feel they're eating a perfect diet. People feel that they're doing all the right things. But if that hormone is sludgy, is coated, is not working at all, then the liver and the pancreas aren't getting the communication. So life is all about communication, and so is our gut health, okay? So we can really use this as part of it says your activated lifestyle to take back better control, better habits, and help you to achieve your metabolic health goals. And that many times is not just about weight loss. It's all of those other things, all those other diseases and symptoms of things that we had listed that has oxidative stress and insulin resistance at the core of it. So our mind-body system, what it will say is give your body the ample time to actually make it work. What they'll find is within 4 to 6 weeks, when you're activating that within the body, the liver is getting a message, the pancreas is getting a message. There's a lot of fiber in that MB Enhance. And so what it really, first of all, will do is just to help you to feel fuller longer. And then what that can do is really help with cravings and all sorts of things, because the liver's getting the word and the message to say, I just ate some food. I don't need to ramp up the glucose going into the bloodstream. Those high glucose levels in the bloodstream are what the underlying cause of cravings actually are, because you've got the imbalance of the insulin and the glucose. And so that whole imbalance will cause cravings. What they found is after 6 to 10 weeks, that food noise really fades. Hunger hormones stabilize, the GLP-1 actually goes up, cravings go down, and healthier choices are easier to make. So this is not a trick to kind of like force your body into weight loss. It's trying to balance out that metabolism. And within that, you're able to make healthier choices because the cravings are less. That food noise, that food hunger is less. And then within 10 to 14 or more weeks, that's when you can really see that digestion improves. You can see some weight loss and body composition changes. And I will tell you, it was at week 13 when all of a sudden my pooping like improved dramatically. And I never was constipated. I went every day. But that 13 week, for whatever reason, I could just really tell that there was a change within that. But really, this is the system that really helped my metabolism to shift and moved me from that 194 down, like it said, 179 in the middle, and then 181. So I'm actually 2 pounds more, but my body composition, and that is so important to understand that body composition has the ability to change. So how do you use this GLP-1 system? So it's a GLP core, which are capsules, and the GLP Enhance, which is actually a powder. So what's recommended is you take 2 capsules with 8 ounces of water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and then you wait at least 30 minutes before consuming the Mind, body, enhance, or anything else. Now, some people wait 4 hours, some people wait 3, some people wait 8 hours. It doesn't really matter. It just says not within 30 minutes. You want no calories within the body. But you can take the enhance at any time, and take the enhance. You can incorporate it into your lunch, your supper, whatever you want to incorporate it into, you can. But at least that 30 minutes later, or later is what it says, take the MB Enhance, and it also recommends taking it with about 24 grams of protein. I do have a specific protein shake that I will use, but also just remember that you can eat it with a hamburger, you can eat it with a steak, you can eat it with some chicken. It doesn't have to be a protein shake. It can be other things as well, okay? Now, what is recommended from day 1 to day 7, just use 2 scoops of the Enhance just to see how your body actually responds to increasing that much fiber, because some people can get a little gas bloaty kind of within that, okay? But otherwise, after that, once things are going well, and everybody, of course, is a little bit different, but once that's going well, you can just continue with the venture of using the mind-body system. Once again,